So we're in LCCBI's History Club program. Started that about 2 years ago together with a couple other students. And over the past year, actually year and a half now, we've had the privilege of researching a World War I soldier, Hugh Murray McQueen, who went to your church. And we brought him into our lives. And then we also met two of his surviving relatives, Judy and McDonald. And Judy's father was Hugh's first cousin, but they're like 10 years apart, so. Just tilted on. I know. Yeah. So we're just here to tell you about him and honor him and the sacrifice that he gave for his country and like all the other soldiers before and after him.
The soldier we have to be speaking on behalf of, Murray, he was born in Troya on the 1st of September in 1894. Murray's family was one of the founding families of Troya. Later on in his life, his dad would go to be one of the founders of Imperial Oil. He worked as a clerk in his grandfather's store for his teenage years until attending St. Andrew's College in Aurora, Ontario from 1912 to 1913.
So to backtrack a bit, Hugh spent his entire life here. He went to school here. He went to the Presbyterian Church here. He also joined Lambton's 70th Battalion in 1910, where he eventually rose to the rank of lieutenant. When war broke out in 1914, Hugh waited for 2 years until 1916 before making the decision to resign from the 70th Battalion and head to Toronto to join the 58th Battalion as a private, where a lot of his college schoolmates were enlisted.
Murray enlisted on February 15th of 1916 and left for training that month. He arrived in England on May 5th, 1916. Murray was taken into the 58th Battalion on June 19th, while the battalion was out of line. One captain and 150 other men were added to the battalion during this time. On June 30th, the battalion returned to the front. This would be Hugh's first time seeing any action.
So, Murray's battalion participated in its first trench raid on July 8th after only 1 week of Hugh being Murray. We'll refer to him as Murray throughout the presentation because that's what he went by. That Murray had only been there for a week. The trench raid was luckily a success and Murray was not injured during it. A couple months later, the battalion was introduced to the Battle of the Somme. On September 16th, the battalion was to provide support to the 52nd and 60th Battalions and their attack on Courcelette. The first day went well, but the second day was slowed as the men grew tired, the enemy brought in reserves, and the artillery support became too heavy. The 7th Brigade's attack failed and the 58th Battalion dug in for the night. The battalion had to change its location again the next day, and there was heavy fighting all along the front lines, with both sides striving to improve their positions. Heavy shelling caused many casualties, with the 58th itself suffering almost 70 wounded, 13 dead, and 3 reported missing. The next day, another 4 were killed, with another 33 wounded and 3 missing.
During this time, when the battalion was out of line, on September 18th, Murray was taken off strength and sent to a small hospital away from the front. He was diagnosed with bronchitis. Murray was discharged from the 50th Battalion on the 22nd of October as he recuperated in the hospital. On November 3rd, Murray was admitted to the casualty clearing station. He was then transferred to General Hospital number 26 on November 24th, 1916. The next day, he was transferred to Conversion Depot number 6. 2 days later, on the 27th, Murray was discharged from the Conversion Depot. Now, from the 27th of November to the 25th of December, records became blurry and Murray almost disappears from the war until he is admitted to the St. John's Ambulance Brigade Hospital for bronchitis. Murray's condition worsens and is transferred to the CCAC, Canadian Casualty Assembly Centre. And by January 7, 1917, Murray had been transferred to a hospital in Glasgow, Scotland. 2 days later, Murray was on his way back to the front.
2 days. You're not sick. Get out of here.
So, it doesn't get any better. January of 1917, he's finally back in the front line. It's also the coldest and harshest winter so far on the front lines. Many men were getting sick from the brutal cold, including Murray, who is again admitted to the field hospital on January 28th for bronchitis. Murray does not return to action until March 10th, where he is taken on by the 2nd Central Ontario Regiment. From April to the end of July, Murray then spends a majority of his time in Europe in and out of hospitals due to his sensitive health. On September 13th of 1917, Murray is taken on into the 2nd Canadian Corps, then assigned to the 9th Canadian Field Ambulance, and then finally back to the 58th Battalion.
In October of 1917, Hugh's battalion participated in the legendary Battle of Passchendaele. The 58th Battalion had done an extraordinary amount of very vigorous training for an offensive launched on the 28th of October. The assault went well, even though out of the 500 men sent in, there were 303 casualties. By the end of November, Passchendaele was over. On December 30th, the battalion was a victim to a gas attack. It began before dawn when the Germans fired around 600 gas shells toward the Canadian lines. About 200 of them landed in the 50th Battalion. The men in the trenches recognized the gas canisters and quickly put on their respirators. But the men in the dugouts were not as fortunate. 7 men were casualties of the gas. Hugh was one of these men.
On January 1st, 1918, Murray is admitted into the Battalion General Hospital. On April 3rd, Murray was moved to the Etching Hill Hospital. Murray was not fully discharged from the hospital until July 5th of 1918. He is taken into the 8th Reserve Battalion. On August 30th, 1918, Murray was taken on strength to the 2nd Canadian Corps. On September 4th, 1918, Murray was taken back into the 50th Battalion. At this time, the 100 Days Offensive has begun. The 58th Battalion was to take part in the Battle of Cambrai. The 58th Battalion began its attack on September 27th. Its job was to support the 116th Battalion, which was its sister battalion. On the morning of September 27th, the attack began. The 58th Battalion quickly broke through the German line of defense and was on the other side of the canal by 1:40 p.m. They then dug in until the next day.
On September 28th, attack was resumed and the Canadians enjoyed more success. The 58th Battalion took the right flank of the attack, while the 116th took the left. The 58th crossed the railway and moved up to the Beaupont-Cambrai road, twice driven back from the road to the railway. D Company, reinforced by the remnants of C Company, managed to complete the clearing of that section of the Marcoing line by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Contact was established with the King's Liverpool Regiment of the 75th British Division. The company helped the 116th clear enemy-held houses east of St. Ol. By 3 o'clock, the situation was under control. The casualties were lighter than on the first days of operation. This was because the battalion had less to lose. The heavy losses of the previous 2 days necessitated a reorganization of the battalion, and B Company was combined with C Company. The 50th was moved into reserve behind the 8th Brigade. That night, orders arrived for the 58th and the 116th Battalions to resume the attack the next morning.
Sadly, Murray would not see the dawn the next day. During the battle the day before, Murray would fall due to a fatal head wound from shrapnel. Murray had seen every aspect of battle, surviving trench raids, the massacre of the Somme, gas attacks, and the devastation suffered at Passchendaele. He had fought and died for his country.
Like thousands before him and thousands after him, Murray was not the only Canadian to ever fight and die in a conflict. To be able to leave home, go to an unknown land, and fight for your nation and her people is truly a remarkable act of courage and bravery. Thank you. And we had a bit of a PowerPoint, but
Yeah.
we don't know what's going on.
So-
So I was just going to set up the computer I brought, and just you can go through the slides if you'd like to see them, and we can answer any questions that you have.
Okay, that sounds good. In talking to relatives, when you were doing your research,
Yes.
were they able to tell you anything? I know he was so young when he left. Were they able to give you any insight about his personality or?
Well, okay.
Just from seeing the way he resigned from being a lieutenant to rejoin and go as a private over, there's a lot of that family was very driven to do what they thought was right. It's even in father starting one of the founders of Imperial Oil. His dad worked with Mr. Fairbank. So their whole family, they like to be involved in everything, and they're very, let's lead this.
The main thing we like to stress about Hugh the most is that he did not have to go at all. Like, he was already a lieutenant in the 70th, so he could just sat back the whole war in Petrolia and enlisted men and helped train men and send them. His father was also a very powerful man in Petrolia, so he could have gotten a desk job or a general job anywhere he wanted to, but then he wanted to go to war. He wanted to be with his friends, and he wanted to experience what his schoolmates were going through. So that was the main point of bravery we tried to express about Hugh. But we also have a couple letters from Hugh. One, I think, that if I brought it with me.
Did you bring it?
I think so. The only the only thing personal we have about Hugh is one letter he wrote home one day. Or did I not bring I might not have brought the letter. No, that's something different. Oh well, I did not bring the letter. But it's after he was gassed, and the whole time he's writing to his mother. Then a couple of them he's also writing to Mrs. Fairbank, which just proves how close they were as like two families. And he's laughing and joking around the whole time about how the war's going. He's joking that he's okay, and he's joking that he's having a break in the hospital, and it's all he's doing perfectly fine, and the lads are doing fine, stuff like this, and that he can't wait to get back out there again, even after the bronchitis and being wounded a couple times. And he was also, we think, gassed more than once.
Yeah, and he spent a lot of time. Yeah, the first initial gassing was at the end of Passchendaele, I think it was. And we believe it was 6 more times. From his medical records, he was admitted in and out of the hospital, not for bronchitis, but a different type of lung. So we think it probably was result of the gas.
But we couldn't confirm it for sure, so we didn't want to put something in the presentation that we didn't know for sure.
Yes.
So when you get to France, where other than, I know you're gonna be at Vimy, where else are you gonna see?
Well, our trip is 5 countries, so we start off in Germany. We are visiting some World War II sites too. Do Germany, we're going to a concentration camp, see the Berlin Wall, Anne Frank house, and then just regular sightseeing things.
Who all's going to this, on this trip?
Everyone in the history club at LCCI.
How many people is that?
30 of us?
There's 30 kids. There was over almost 60 kids in the beginning, but due to the amount of teachers, you can only have like 12 students per teacher.
Yeah.
Because we only had like 2 or 3 teachers, we had to cut the kids back. So there was a large interest in history in LCCI. But yeah, because we go Berlin, and then Amsterdam,
Then Amsterdam, and then it's Belgium.
and then France, and then we actually decided to go to England to go see Churchill's war rooms and stuff like this. So
Where is he buried?
He's 2 hours north of Paris.
Paris.
I can't remember the name of the cemetery, but it's 2 hours north of Paris.
it's just outside the city of Cambrai.
Yes, it's just outside the city of Cambrai.
That's where Hugh Murray McQueen is buried.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys are lucky, when we went to school, there was no such thing as history, it was called current events.
We did learn a bit about when he was younger. We have pictures of his family, and he was quite the strapping young lad, I think so. But we can't, it just shocks us that he was so driven to go to war. Even after 2 years of it going on and them hearing what was going on, still wanted to go.
How old was he when he died?
24.
We actually realized that when we thought about it, he's just like us, but 100 years earlier, actually. So he'd be exactly like our age at this time, so,
When he enlisted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, 2 years. See, that was the,
Because we're
yeah,
17, we'll be
1894. Sorry, I'm thinking of his brother. We have a I forgot, I left a picture of his brother at home. We thought just the one boy signed up from the family, but it turns out he has another younger brother. He also signed up, but right at the end, and Hugh told him not to sign up, but he still didn't listen, of course. Who listens to the older brothers, right? No one, right? So, but we had a picture of him too, but we left that out of the presentation as well. Just want, if you can all see this, can most of you see it, or?
Yeah.
We could probably go through it right here, because, and we'll rotate it as we sort of go
I don't
along.
think it needs to be rotated.
Can you see that?
Yeah,
So this is the
I don't think I brought the picture with me. I just brought those in case the slideshow didn't work.
Yeah, we have the actual like printed out copies that his family gave us. So that's the family children, and then the entire family here. There was 4 children and 2 adults.
Is that a typo on the spelling?
It might be.
Okay.
That was the weird thing we found. The hardest part about our soldier that we found was his last name is spelled 4 different ways when we were researching him
Yeah.
online.
And his name was different.
Yeah.
In every record. We had records, we have a CD with all his medical records that the government had, and it's spelled different, his name is spelled different, he's got different names, his age is all, we didn't know how old he was when he died, we had to dig and dig and dig. It was, we found the record, the government says he was 22, then we found he was 24, we talked to his family, he was 24, but then when he signed up, he was 22 or something.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
His name was spelled like this, and then it was spelled McQueen, or 2 E's, and then his name would go from Hugh Murray McQueen to Murray McQueen to Hugh McQueen to Hugh Murray was his name was at one point.
That's not a huge.
Yeah.
The man himself went by Murray, but
Okay.
this is Murray in early 1916 with, it's with some of the other men from Troy at the 70th recruiting. This is at the Masonic Temple.
He's right here.
At the very end. I'll actually send around the folder too.
We have,
As
this
more-
is where we went and we took this picture, and we took a picture where he was actually standing. And it's at the very, very end, right across from Krabby Joe's.
Going back into these days, about 1 soldier in 100 without a camera.
Yeah, I know.
Nowadays, in 100 years' time, there'll be so much information you can get it, but it's hard to find any pictures going back.
Yeah, I know this one. That's why I actually found this. I actually found this picture originally at work in a book, and then I was just reading the book one day just for fun, and then I realized I read the name like 3 times to finally figure out that this was our soldier appearing, and then we have another story about how we got a lot of our information, but that'll come up later on.
That's the, all of
70,
Petrolia's 70th Battalion.
and then Hugh is right there. Back there, the back second last. And then this one, if someone's been on the Troy Heritage Site, this is actually taken from the Troy Heritage Site for our military history. This is Hugh right here. He looks a little different than his other photos, but the confusing thing was is these guys are both named Hugh. So this is Murray McQueen, and this is Hugh Sharpley. And so we have Hugh Murray McQueen is on the left with his friend, Hugh Sharpley is on the right. This photo was taken shortly after they both enlisted. The description for the photo says that the both of them served in the 70th, and they both ended up in the 58th. Murray was in the 70th until he resigned and signed up himself, and his friend Hugh Sharpley was in the 70th until he sent him overseas, and then he got put in the 58th, so they ended up together anyway. Mr. Sharpley on the right would actually survive the entire war, including the battle that Hugh was killed in. And then this is just some images of some of the types of battles that he was in during the First World War. So this is their trench raid on the Somme. We actually think that this one, I looked into it a bit more after you sent it to me. I think this actually might be the 58th to begin with on their trench raid. A little bit up in the air because most trench raids took place at night. So we think it might just be a reenactment during the day to make like propaganda usage, make them look better, but couldn't really figure too much out about it. This is like the Somme battlefield. That's where they set off the giant mine in the Somme. If anyone's a huge history buff like we are, they could hear that blast in London from where they were. So, and then there's some more Battle of the Somme pictures. This is some of the hospitals that they say that's Etching Hill Hospital. I don't believe them because they also say it's also another picture said it was an American Red Cross hospital. But this might have been the hospital where Hugh actually spent most of the war. So. And this is the Battle of Passchendaele. Sorry you guys can't see it that well.
Yeah, Passchendaele was like a swamp, mud and water everywhere. Our grade 10 history teacher told us that with all the crater holes filled with water, that if you slipped off, you would just drown. They wouldn't find your body, you would just drown.
So it's amazing that Hugh was wounded at Passchendaele and survived to time the wounded just slipped into the mud.
Have you seen the movie Passchendaele?
Yes,
Yeah.
watched it in history class.
Yeah.
They actually say they make the battlefield look too good in that movie. They actually say, which is a little cruel, but they say there's not enough sinking or mud. Fine. And then this is the Battle of Cambrai. And then actually, if I know, this is when the Canadians took Cambrai. This is actually some soldiers from the 58th running into Cambrai. So for a time without a lot of pictures, the 58th are very photogenic people, apparently, taking lots of photos. This is actually the 58th at their rail line, just after they took the rail line. I don't know if you've seen that. I haven't shown you that one, but that's the 58th at the rail line. And then this is just them at Cambrai Road, but I don't know which that could be, so. And then this was the canal they had to capture. It was around like 20, 30 feet deep.
Canal du Nord.
Yeah, it is, the canal of the North. There's this picture, and there's also a really steep part of the canal, but this is the part of the canal they had to capture because there was no way they could take the other one. And this is actually Murray's dead man pension. So for every soldier in the Commonwealth that died in the First World War, their family would get a dead man's penny. But the weird thing we found about Murray's dead man penny was it was found out west in a field in Alberta, like in a farmer's field. And then they managed to bring it home somehow. We don't know how it ended up there. Maybe someone took it with them, and then we don't know why it's buried in a field. But and then this is the notice in the Toronto Star a few weeks after his death, which is also in the file. And then this is the novel where Bruce and I got a lot of our information from about the battalion in general. So it's called Second and Done. If you ever want to know any more, a lot of information on the 50th Battalion, this is a day-by-day, month-by-month, year-by-year account of every single thing the 58th did in the First World War. And then we actually, my mother bought this.
Yeah, the story of finding that novel was just, it's
got
just like picking up the file and meeting his family. We were in London one day, and his mom went shopping while we were with our friends. And she picked this book up thinking, because we like history books, thinking it would be a nice read. But in fact, it contributed a lot to our project.
Yeah. All the military history that was in the slideshow and in the presentation is right from this book. Because all you have to do is line up his medical record to everything that happens in this book. And you figured out his entire war story. Just like that. So
How did you happen to pick this soldier to do your?
They were all on the table, and we decided that he had the coolest name.
You didn't know which one it was.
No, we had no idea about him.
No.
Our teacher wouldn't tell us anything about what the soldiers did or anything. We just thought he had the coolest name because he had 3 names.
yeah, 3 names instead of 2. Every soldier had 2 names, and he was Hugh Murray McQueen. That's what I always comment on. We're like, not Hugh McQueen, it's Hugh Murray McQueen, so we picked him. And then we got incredibly lucky. In 1,000 ways, we got incredibly lucky. So.
Well, I think we're incredibly lucky, guys, that you came to tell us about it, because